Hey everybody, Bobby Medina here with my dear friend, the great Paul Barron. And today we have a wonderful trumpet artist, an educator. He happens to be a Warburton performing artist and clinician. He is the newly appointed co-principal trumpeter of the Sarasota Orchestra. He's also an adjunct instructor at the State College of Florida, Manatee, Sarasota. He's a member of the Romm Trio with his parents, Ronnie and Avis Romm. He's the co-founder of the Romm Trumpet Academy for virtual teaching. We just want to welcome Aaron Romm. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to chat with you guys.
All right. Well, hey, I'm going to throw out the first question because I bet everyone wants to know what was it like growing up with a world famous trumpet player, Ronnie Romm? And for anybody that doesn't know, if you maybe lived under a rock your whole life, Ronnie was a founding member of the Canadian Brass. So what was that like growing up with Ronnie as your dad?
You know, I'm blessed to have really cool parents. It's not one of those situations where mom and dad pressured me really into doing anything that I didn't feel was right up my alley. So mom and dad are great. Both parents are awesome. Mom is a Steinway artist as well, international pianist and all that. So to directly answer your question, they didn't make a big deal about what dad did. It was just one of those things that, like, hey, dad's going on tour for concerts. Let's take him to the airport. He comes back and we hang out. They never said, your father is anything really but your father. But the importance was that when he's home, he needs to be able to practice, right? And so we would occasionally, like, with breaks in school and things like that, they would bring us out for the occasional concert, to see them while they're on the road. And, so with that in mind, it was just dad, right? And, growing up around, I guess, the who's who of musicians. So the really, looking back on it now, I think the really fun part was that I got to meet these luminaries as people first, not as, these brass greats that, they're people first brass greats that also happen to be luminaries, right? And I know that if not phrased the right way, that can sound very pompous, but knowing and appreciating who these people are and were and are is a really important part of the upbringing. And dad always made sure to be dad first, and the incredible trumpet legend next.
That's really cool. So, with your trumpet development, then when you started, was he your first teacher, or did he, like so many other professional trumpet players that Paul and I both know, have to send their kid off to somebody else to be taken seriously, I guess?
Well, I guess when I started, this was like 3 weeks ago. No, I first started that was he got me started. Just showing me how to do that. Just make a sound on the instrument. And at the time when I was in fourth grade, the school where I was just starting their band program. So it was pretty new, like, that year. And I remember distinctly bringing home this letter from the new band director, who I actually am fortunate enough to work with still, and as a coach for his school. He's still teaching in the area. His name is Victor Mongillo. He's an incredible guy and a fantastic teacher, and this wonderful mentor to so many students. Anyway, so he sends his letter home, and I said, like, Mom, Dad, there's the letter for band. And they're like, okay, and then they're like, we know what's coming. And he's like, I think I want to be in it. It's like, okay, and what do you want to play? I said, I want to play the tuba. and they're like, what's it? Wait, what'd you say? and so it kind of went back and forth, and finally, Dad says to me, he's like, well, you know how in the Canadian Brass, Chuck has to bring his tuba everywhere. I said, uh-huh. He says, well, yeah, he has to bring that big tuba case around everywhere he goes. Yeah? I said, yeah. I said, do you want to do that? Like to play the trumpet. So anyway, that's it. It didn't quite happen that way, but it's just it's a fun memory.
So size does matter then.
I guess so. Yeah, absolutely. Well played. But yeah, so that he because he was on tour so much at that point, I think he also wanted it not to be one of those things where like I felt like it had to while he was home. But anyway, so I studied with Victor at first, and I was really excited about it, and just like everybody watching this video, the trumpet they called us, right, and we answered the call, and we do pretty much every day, right, whether we feel like it or not. And so yeah, he was my first teacher, and looking back now, I every chance I get, I say thank you to him, not only for doing that, but also his patience with me, because well, as a student, I genuinely try. I really do, and I did, and all that, but other things at the time were more, I should say, more prioritized in my life, like video games. Right. So for all the gamers out there, it's okay. There's still hope. But no, that was one of those things where I applaud my parents, because I can't imagine that you have this opportunity, right, and just without pushing, saying, how do you encourage and help direct someone you love and want to help, without making it seem like a chore and a have to, instead of I get to, and so I applaud them still to for what they did and how they approached it, of hey, and even when I decided going into college I wanted to study trumpet, they just said, look, if you want our help, we'll help you. All you have to do is ask. Right. And sometimes I think and I guess this is a broader subject, but sometimes as trumpeters and as decisive musicians, it's tough to ask for help. That's a really there are a couple stages in front of that and so it took me a while to really do that. And now at this point, if I have no problem saying like, hey, can I play this for you? Can I reach out and because it's what matters more, the musical product or my pride, right?
That's a great point.
Right. People come to hear us play, and they deserve our absolute best. So yeah, we get out of our own way, and if we need to do something differently or make some adjustments, do that, because the music deserves it, and those who come to see you play and support you absolutely deserve it, especially after COVID.
Well, it's great that you have them as a sounding board also to help you with that. That's something, man, I wish I had, growing up. I had always dreamed as a kid, God, I wish I had a father that was a trumpet player that I could learn from, that I could do all this stuff. Maybe in hindsight, that was a pipe dream. And even if I did, it may have worked out completely wrong for me. But I'm glad it worked out for you and all that. So where did you attend university at?
Vanderbilt University. And I studied with Alan Cox, who before then he was at I believe Southern Mississippi for quite some time, and it's just a wonderful mentor and human being, and I think at that point I was not a superstar, right, and I'm still not, but the point being, like, you expect with the name Romm, it comes with some extra stuff, right?
It's some big shoes to fill, for sure.
And for the vast majority of people that I've come across have always been very respectful, at least to my face, about it. Of course, I appreciate that, but it's at that point, I decided very late that that's what I wanted to do, by comparison to a lot of other students. And so when I made that decision, what I came in with an idea of how I wanted to sound, or what a trumpet could sound like, and that's a pretty important concept. This is a place to start for your teaching, right? So he was very patient with me as I was kind of figuring out everything else past that, and as a mentor is just, you know, fantastic. So after that, I went to University of Illinois, where Dad was also teaching, and initially I was going to study with Michael Ewald, who before he was teaching then there he played a lot in the Los Angeles studios, and I believe he was on the Rocky IV soundtrack, right? And so within, unfortunately, you know, he was not. He passed within about a month of my arriving there, and you know, he was like an uncle. I knew him very well before then, but you know, he sadly I believe his liver cancer, to my memory. But anyway, so I didn't get the chance to study with him, but you know, some other really good teachers along the way. Jake Warburton, who I believe is now teaching in Texas, if I'm not, I might be mistaken about that. And then followed by Charles Duvall, who's still at Illinois. So yeah, it's with some lessons with other big name trumpeters along the way as well. So I've been very fortunate on that front to be able to work with some really fine people.
So how long have you been down in Sarasota now? And did you move for the teaching job, or did you move for the symphony?
You know, good question. Another story. We're going to be trading stories.
Good. I love it.
You know, after I finished at Illinois, and I don't think it's at this point, I think we can be completely open about it. After I finished my DMA, and I was so beaten up emotionally at that time, and that was my own perception of it. They didn't do anything wrong. Music was no longer fun, right? I finished and said, you know, this is, I have two choices. I can either put the trumpet down, right, or I can continue with this and find a way to make it fun again. So after I finished, I started putting together some you know, school concerts, and the reason I say that is because my focus was on how did the Canadian brass start, which was school concerts and outreach concerts. And there was a wonderful sounding board for them to figure out how to build a concert that would work for not only, you know, kindergarten through high school, all the way to age 80 and up. And so I said, okay, let's try that and put it to the test. And sure enough, it was fun again. Right. And so around that time, I was going to move down to Orlando to work with my brother and you know, get a quote unquote real job. Right. And he works in clinical research, and said, you know, let's try this and then kind of feel my way through the music thing, and we'll see how that goes. But then I had the opportunity to teach at Illinois State University, and said, oh, okay, I'll delay this move for a little while. So I did. It kept getting delayed with other great opportunities, right? So I said, well, maybe I'll stick around in music for a little while longer, and that's when the relationship with Warburton came about. Like I was very close to saying, like, well, just say this, and then become fortunate enough to become a Warburton artist, and so I said, well, let's use this opportunity, and so working with that, and mostly in Illinois, and then coming down to Florida, I said, you know, let's come down here anyway and move to Orlando. Why not? You know, it's a bustling metropolis. Why not? And then, you know, I said, I don't know anybody professionally yet in Orlando, and I don't want to play the Romm card. I don't want to come in there saying, like, I'm a Romm, you should hire me, right? I want that to be based purely on my own actual merit. So I started in Sarasota, sticking with my first trumpet teacher, who brought me to the I think it was the Florida Bandmasters Association, kind of our meeting of this area, and I got to meet the band directors, and I started coaching pretty much straight away as soon as I moved down here, and with that, you know, meeting all the other coaches who happen to play with the orchestra. And again, my idea was not to say, hey, hire me for the orchestra. That's not. Well, let's step on as few toes as possible, right? And besides, you know, at that time, my focus was more on chamber and solo performances, right? But you know, what's also helpful is having a steady paycheck, So there's that. But anyway, so I got to know the members of the symphony really well over those last few years, and then they had an opening for both principal and co-principal, and I auditioned at the time, and I ended up being runner-up, which to me was very surprising. Not to be self-deprecating, but there were many that live and breathe orchestra. And through this time, I always appreciated and respected it, but that's not where I had put my focus. And I had said, okay, let's, I'm going to audition for this. I can stand toe to toe, right? And so I ended up being runner up, and at the time, the gentleman that became principal and co-principal were not able to move down to Florida straight away. So I ended up playing a lot with the symphony anyway, and he even got to do Brandenburg too, as the new guy, as an outsider, right? And I know that comes off as like bragging, but more like, to me, it was a really interesting play, because growing up in chamber music, seeing the applications for other ensembles as being kind of an indispensable thing, like that's what I know. And it happens to work. Of course, there are major differences, and especially when you start doing that more full time, like I'm doing right now. Yeah, there's a lot of pretty serious changes and adjustments that need to be made. But everything is applicable. It's just big chamber music, and that's been really helpful. So that was what I have been doing since I moved down, and of course through the shutdown during the pandemic, my wife and I were really fortunate to be able to play at the church where we were married on a weekly basis. So they've been very not only supportive of us, but we've helped bring more music, because they were live streaming everything, and they would open up the everything over YouTube about a half hour before the mass would start. And so in order for people not to be staring at a blank screen for a half hour before the mass starts, wouldn't it be nice to have some music, right? So we got to provide that, and getting to play with families is once again, I guess that's a common thread within the Romm families, that everybody gets to play, and it's a really positive thing. So it was a reminder of, I guess, when you're working day in, day out as a musician, you guys know actually far better than I do, that sometimes things can get, we lose sight occasionally of the bigger purpose, I think, sometimes, right? And I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want it to paint to be painting a negative picture, but it can be dangerous when you're just, it becomes a grind, right? This and that, when that's all of a sudden taken away, right? It becomes very clear. It's just like, this is being in performance and presenting what we do is such a special part of who we are. And when that's taken away, that can become very painful. So having that opportunity was a nice refresher for me of everything that my mom always said before we walk out on stage, which was, we get to play, right? Hey, it's never, have you guys ever been like physically comfortable on stage?
Very rarely.
I think I've got to the point where I am, but there's always, I always have my moments, it depends on what the program is that I'm playing or whatever, but
sure.
It's easier in a familial like situation. I have a group, a couple of different groups that I've traveled and toured with. So when I do that, we rehearse like crazy, we're great friends and all that. So when we go on as a team. It's not just me, but occasionally I maybe go out as a guest artist with a band or something, and that's a lot more pressuresome because I'm out of my element, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
But I think it's great that you have your mom and your dad like that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just I think there's some valuable information for anybody that's watching. I mean, throughout your career, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have changes, and I think something that Aaron just said a little while back about essentially meeting people, networking, not running in and stepping on toes and basically demanding. I mean, Paul and I have seen a lot of this crazy stuff, and there's something, you do need to get yourself out there. You do need to do some marketing of sorts, but it's really more important to one, I think, let your playing speak for itself, and to develop associations, with and close ties with people that have an affinity for the same type of music, maybe that you do, that can help co-support each other.
Yeah,
You-
that's. Go ahead.
Sorry, Aaron. There was one term that you used, and I've never heard it before, and I thought this is brilliant, and I want to just expand on that a little bit. And you said when you've had such a lot of experience in chamber music, and then playing in a symphony, it's a large chamber orchestra. You know what I mean? And I'm wondering, not having played a lot of classical chamber music, but I was in a brass quintet and, some other things, your ears have to be so in tune to everybody else and what role you're playing, whether it be the lead role or a supportive role. How do you feel that that's helped you as far as a symphonic player? And is that a good direction, do you think, to start there going into a symphonic world, or is it easier to come the other way? That's a tough question, I bet. It would be for me.
And I say this in complete honesty. It's a great question, because I don't think there's enough focus on that that mindset and that perception in school, right? When we're learning these things. For me, it's what I had, so I had to use it. Right. That's what that's where my training was, and it said, like, use what you know. And so I think with the preparation for playing in an orchestra and playing in larger ensembles is absolutely necessary. But I think it as you said, tuning into everything that's going on with the chamber music mindset, I think is just for the listening part and communication. What I think allowed me to work well with the others is that, like, hey, I'm playing with the woodwinds now. I get to play with the woodwinds. Like, let's communicate. So that's where the focus has been at first, out of necessity for me. Moving forward, I'm adapting more of the other skills that others who have spent much more time in orchestras have used. And I think also the other thing that's been really helpful is coming in. Anybody who sees your resume will know where you're coming from, right? In the days now that we have to market ourselves, I think there's also this pressure to certainly not lie, but leave out other things that don't sound as impressive, right? And I think that can be a dangerous thing if we're not open to learning. And of course, you don't want to say, like, well, I'm just learning here. You're paying me to be here, but I'm still learning. You don't want to do that. But more importantly, of making the effort to keep an open mind and learn from those who have much more experience than you. I mean, that's all around us, and it's whether we choose to be open to that or not, even if that's all internal or very much external. Trumpet's an external thing, right? It's a very internal, but everybody hears it. So yeah, not a whole lot of hiding.
Yeah, I think, we in order to grow, you have to keep learning. In trumpet, there's always something to learn. Music, there's always, new things. Outside of the classical realm, I mean, do you cross over into commercial playing and big, other types of playing as well?
As much as I can, as much as I feel comfortable saying that, yes, but I don't call myself a commercial player. I understand the commercial sound, and I think that fits best when I'm working with other classical musicians. I'll bring that, so more of the orchestral pop shows and things like this. Those I'm pretty comfortable doing. But I guess you hear me struggling with actually spitting it out. I don't consider myself this or that or the other. I'm a strange, odd mix of this, still not really knowing where I actually fit. You know, and I think that's I like to say it's okay, simply because things are changing, and being willing to and able to adapt quickly, or as quickly as possible. You know, that means not being stuck on certain equipment, not being stuck on certain, you know, mindsets of it has to be this way or that way, just being as flexible as possible. And that I attribute back again to chamber music. And I'm not relegating that to simply just brass quintet. I mean, like anybody who was played in a small ensemble before, where you're out there, it's you. and you're communicating with other people, and it's your voice with these other musicians. So
well, Paul has a great term, you know, that I'll spit it out here, Paul, but he calls himself, and he thinks it's I think it's a great word. It's a musical chameleon, and it's absolutely, you know, someone that can just play in a myriad of different styles and do it authentically, you know, as best they can. I mean, you may not be, you know, Conrad Gazzo if you're playing lead trumpet, or you may not be Maurice Andre if you're playing piccolo, but you can do a pretty darn good job of it and get away with it. I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I've been kind of that. I think you have to be sort of that in order to be successful and have longevity in a playing career. But I also think the bigger part of it, and you hit on this earlier, was keeping it joyful, working with new people, keeping it interesting, and making it fun. For me, it's doing the same thing all the time. I get bored easily, you know, and Paul and I have had this conversation, because he'll do a run, boy, for a long time. And it's like, God, how can you play that same chair, that same part night after night for 2 years in a row? But Paul has his mindset in ways, you know, to be able to achieve this as well. And I have a total respect for that. And then, of course, he plays a lot of other things when he gets off the road as well.
Well, your point about just having an open mindset, I mean, that's such great advice for everybody. And, you know, we did an interview with Bobby Shue talking about always learning, you know, and he told us that Doc Severinsen called him up for a lesson. Doc Severinsen, of all people, you know, so that's great advice. Bobby is still always learning, and Doc, at what, is he 92, 93 now? Is still learning. So your advice about always staying open is great. And thank you for that answer about, you know, coming from the chamber into a larger orchestral situation. I know that speaking with some other brass players that may not have done the same journey in the same direction as you, trombone sections, for instance, you know, their mindset is we can annihilate everybody in front of us. And you know, they're not using this beyond the 3 trombones. It's just how loud can we play and how many bodies can we leave in our wake? So I love what you said about that. And I think that's so true and so important.
And I also I have a theory. I don't know if this is true or not, but my experience is that with people in general, that, you know, the people that we tend to gravitate towards want to do other stuff too, right? They want to have other, dare I say, purpose, you know, outside of, and I don't mean to cheapen this and say, like, because it's very, very difficult just playing the part, right? Because that's crazy hard as it is, but having something outside of that where it is you take ownership of it, and you are responsible, on top of you know, a key role of that music, and what I'm getting at is more on the chamber music side of things, simply where it is you, right? And what I've noticed is that people tend to get excited and challenged in a very different way coming from larger ensembles into chamber music, right? So the skills are very transferable from chamber music into larger ensembles, but the purpose, I think, as humans and human nature, and as musicians and as sensitive people, and sensitive, I mean, in a good way, that transfer really nicely into creating something new. And that's what I've noticed, and that's really exciting for me to see, because they say like, hey, we get to play with the symphony brass quintet, and they're pumped about it, right? And they're saying like, and not that they're not pumped about the other stuff, but just so excited. And I so like that's something that it's infectious, right?
Yeah.
Just as negativity is infectious, so is positivity as well. So and that's a really fun thing for me to see, is like, hey, we get to play in a quintet, and we get to choose our own stuff. We get to be integral in the direction of this, and that's I think we inherently want that, or want something like that. We don't want to necessarily be a soloist all the time, but so that might be a little bit too much, like, but with this in mind, it can be a really special thing.
Well, positivity is something that's a great part of character. I'll use Paul as an example. I mean, my job sometimes as a contractor for a group, for a national act coming through, or as a bringing in a show band for a corporate event or whatever, there's a lot of pressure I have behind the scenes, putting it together, organizing, arranging everything. Excuse me, everything behind the scenes is chaos sometimes, and it can be very last minute, demanding. I can be dealing with people that are just a pain to work with, and I don't need musicians being a pain in the ass to work with. I need people that are going to be around me, that are going to be fun and happy and elevated. And that's one of the things I love about Paul when he walks in. I mean, everybody, it's like there's a light that comes into the room, and it's really enjoyable to be around people like that. And I think it's something that people need to consider when you walk into a room. You need to introduce yourself to everybody, be part of the team, have a good time, and create a good time. And it doesn't mean be a clown or goof off or whatever. I mean, we did an interview with it was Tony Cadlick, I think, was on it, and it was Tony's birthday yesterday. I was thinking about it, but I think Glenn Drews. It was about Glenn Drews was on it, and everybody talked about Glenn. Not just what a great trumpet player he is, but it was more so like, man, when he walks in, it's just like, it's like a party. It's fun, and if there's ever any tension or issues going on, this guy with his personality is able to diffuse everything and move things forward and keep it upbeat. And it's something that for me, it's really important. And I hope that people listen to this, because what Aaron just said is right on. Hey, let's shift gears here just a little bit, because I wanna learn a little bit more about your association with Warburton, because I did play, and I still do use a Warburton mouthpiece on occasion. Nice. I've known Terry a little bit over the years. I've got to know him. One of the greatest guys in the business. Just another super fun, nice guy to be around and hang with. And I'd like to learn more about, how that happened for you, and a little bit about your gear.
Sure. Well, there's been a slight hiccup in my own gear recently. My dad was working with Terry on the new Romulator version of the B flat trumpet, right? His own line, own design. And so I'd also gotten one that we tweaked around some of made some tweaks, and so it's a slightly different design than my dad's. And I mean, this is a very painful story for me to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway, because I think we can all learn from that. And I will answer your question, I promise you. So played a concert with the orchestra. I was putting my stuff away, made the mistake of trying to carry too much stuff. And I had this trumpet for about 3 weeks, played beautifully. I love it. And now, after it made its trip from my hands onto the floor, it's getting a new bell, and there's that sickening thing. I say this not out of any pride. I'm actually so embarrassed and so frankly angry with myself for that decision to carry too much stuff at the time. So learn from my mistake, everybody. Yeah, I have a doctorate. I still made that mistake, right? Anyway, yeah. So I do play the new Romulator, and we'll be coming out with a newer version very, very soon. After that, the bell is a new bell is being put on.
There is a silver lining.
There is and silver plating too, right?
Bump.
So anyway, I'm also playing a Warburton C trumpet. The 339 model, very big bell, very very open, very resonant. And for me, the equipment discussion has always been kind of an interesting one, because I know it's interesting for everybody, but I mean interesting in a way of like there's always questions, right? In my mind, it's like I think we trumpeters share this of like, I wonder what would happen if I changed this or changed that, right? And that's a beautiful thing for the industry, because it keeps things moving. But for the Warburton company, that allowed me to that association allowed me to kind of discover myself, right? And so the way that came about was when I first came down here. I had, there's a time finishing up school, I where I was talking about that debate with myself, whether to do this or do that, put the trumpet down or go. And so Dad said, hey, go visit Terry next time you're back in Florida. So I did. And they Terry and Kenny and the whole team had helped me find some more equipment that reminded me that, yeah, I'm the one playing the instrument, and I need to adapt certain principles in my practice, but there are ways to make it easier, just easier enough to say, hey, I can do this, right? And it doesn't do it for you. You still have to do it. A new mouthpiece isn't gonna solve all of the problems, but it can make things 3 to 7% easier, which is a lot.
It is.
And so that was the start of like and kind of an awakening for me. So a little while after that, Terry was coming through town, and we had chatted a few times through then. I told them kind of what I was up to, and they said over lunch, said, we'd like to make you an artist. And I was like, huh? It didn't register at first. So anyway, another one of my like duh moments, like dropping a trumpet, and then there's also that. Almost dropped the ball on that one, but and anyway, so I called him back, and I said, let's yes, I'd like to move forward with this. So all of a sudden, I have the resources, and fortunate enough to have the resources to be able to try new equipment and figure out what it is that I do. Right. So what are the things that we've trained for, and what it is that I do? So I do try and make whatever I'm playing on, whether it's piccolo, trumpet, B flat, C, E flat, there is a Warburton element in everything. Not because of the sponsorship. It's not something I'm paid to do. It's something I believe in. And I think that's one of those things. Is it right for everybody? Maybe not. But for me, it is, and what they stand for as a company, and what they've done to help me. They've always treated me like family. They didn't need to, but they always did. So that's how that came about. And before, I was one of the very few trumpet players that didn't get the hand from the conductor. Growing up, it was always like, more. And so he said, okay, let's try out this equipment of I think I was playing the 336 model B flat trumpet that they have. Is very big, it's their symphonic model. And I realized in chamber settings, like, man, how do I keep up with Dad? Which is a kind of a strange thing, like, keeping up, being anywhere in the same universe of keeping up in a chamber setting with Ronnie Romm is a huge thing. But how do I keep up with him? Bigger, or now I've come to the point of like, well, let's bring it back down. I realized that I need a little bit lighter weight equipment for me. Just for the way that I play, the way that I approach things. And granted, I am learning, I'm changing, always adapting as much as I possibly can. But I think we tend to come back to our nature, right? And nature, our own nature as people is tough to change. We can adapt certain elements of our personality and adapt them, but it's really hard to make permanent changes. And sometimes we don't want to or shouldn't need to. So anyway, that was the journey with the trumpet. I've come to back to lighter weight equipment that is easier to play for longer stretches. Because, and again, that's a really useful thing in chamber settings, that longevity of it doesn't have to be loud all the time, and you can have some variation. And I found for me, the lighter weight equipment, smaller equipment, it makes it easier to control that. So
that's very interesting. Coming back to what's comfortable, I've always equated it to like that pair of Levi's jeans that you just put on and it feels great right away, and I think we probably all grow up in a certain way, adapting our bodies to what we might have been playing at that time, and it feels really comfortable and natural and like home. So it's an interesting journey that you've gone, smaller to larger and then come back.
Come back. And I guess there's something to that. I've not thought about this statement at all, so this could come out being completely incoherent. But the testing your limits of like what's the absolute maximum you can do, just like any kind of weight training. You don't want to run into that, like immediately go do that, but keeping it informed as a line of like, okay, this is what I know is happening with me right now, and this is what I know that I need. Can I find that place that is comfortable? So at least in a stressful situation, I know that in here there is something I can latch on to and ride that and be confident and play like me. And
that was very coherent. Well done.
Well, and I think what you just said is awesome, because so many people want to play like Maurice, or they want to be Doc or Maynard or whoever it might be. But ultimately, you can only be you. There's already a Doc or a whoever out there, and I think it takes a while to find your own voice, but I think you have to seek it as well. And I think that's a point that's well made. Well, listen, I know we're just about out of time here, but we want to thank you for being on with us. If people want to learn more about you, Aaron Romm, they can go to aaronromm.com. They can also learn more about the Romm Trumpet Academy at rommtrumpetacademy.com. We thank you so much for being here. And I have to give a little shout out to Ronnie and Avis to say, you guys, you done good raising this kid. So we got our eye on him, and I'm sure you were destined for even more greatness. So thank you so much for being here with us, Aaron. Appreciate it.
So much for having me on. It genuinely means the world to be on with you guys. I know you have a lot of other very big name people coming on to chat with you, and just to be on with you guys. It really means a lot. So thank you for taking the time and let me I guess talk about myself, maybe a little bit too much, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. What a pleasure.